Adjourn the meeting?
Uh-huh.
Oh, sorry. Come outside, Granny. It's new. Granny, you want some water? Okay. You gonna sit right there? I guess me and Granny just gonna sit over there. Want some water, Granddad?
No, sir.
Oh, yeah, that's right. You gotta drink.
Attorney Mary Gill, can you hear me?
Hey, Grady. Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, great. All right. I just wanted to just test my mic here.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey, Mary Jo, can you hear me okay?
Now it's on a computer.
Is there any chance that you can hear me? I'm subverting the process with the system.
Mike, say something.
Okay, I put you on mute on my phone.
I'm not able to hear Mike.
Mike, we can't, Grady and I can't hear you.
So the mic is.
Mary Jo, can you hear me now? On my phone?
I did. Say it again.
Mary Jo,
No, we can, I can hear you on my phone, cannot hear you on GoToMeeting.
Mary Jo Ramsey, can you hear me? Just,
Oh, hold on, it was muted. Hold on
Okay.
a second, it was muted.
Okay.
Mayor Gil Ramsey, I believe that Dawn is a believer in muting Mike Sims. Can you hear me now?
Okay, I can hear you. Grady, can you hear it?
Yes, now we're in business.
Awesome,
Okay.
thank you very much. Okay. Awesome, good job. Awesome, we are doing fine. Everything is going well.
Can you hear the mayor? That's an important thing.
Presentation time.
Are we good to go, Mary Gill? Grady, can you hear us?
We're already live, so.
I know, but I don't think they can hear.
They can hear us.
They heard
I
that.
can hear Dawn.
Yeah, they can hear me.
Can you hear the mayor?
Yeah, Mayor, I can hear you.
All right, we're ready to go then. This time, the mayor will call to order the special city council meeting and workshop 4:30 p.m. Tuesday, August the 25th, 2020. City Council Chambers, 201 East Nash Street, Terrell, Texas. We have remotely Grady Simpson, District 2. Tim Morris will be joining us remotely at 5. We have in chambers Mayorani Velasquez and Council Member Charles Whitaker, District 4. Grady, would you mind leading us in invocation, please?
Yes, sir. Lay you all our heads, please. Oh, Father, we come giving you thanks. We give much gratitude for how you kept us through this pandemic. We thank you for watching over the town. We thank you for giving us guidance and wisdom to keep the city safe and secure. We ask that you continue to allow us to walk in your abundance and your blessings. All things we say we pray. Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to these Texans, one state, under God, one and indivisible. This time, we'll hear remarks from visitors. Do we have any? Hearing none, we'll move on to new business. Item number 5.1 is discuss regional transportation council partnerships. That'll be Mr. John Godwin, if you'll please come forward.
Thank you, Mayor. I believe there's a PowerPoint. It's
Yes.
gonna be, okay. We just don't.
It's in your packet. It's in our packet.
Okay, I got you. So it's not gonna be like necessarily showing up. Okay, so anyway, just a few things we're doing with the RTC, the Regional Transportation Council, which is a unit of the North Central Texas Council of Governments in Arlington. And a couple of projects we just wanted to bring you up to date on, and one of those is a realignment of 429, FM 429 on the east side of town. As you probably know, the Union Pacific block grant, which is FHWA, Federal Highway Administration, and then another $2 million of state money. And so coordinated with TxDOT We expect to start coordinating very, very soon. In fact, we talked to COG a couple weeks ago. They were a little surprised, I think, that we hadn't heard from TxDOT yet, but that's a project that should begin, at least the design phase. It'll take some time. It's a significant project because you're building a lot of that road where there's not a road right now. But that's in the works, and so it's a very positive project, we think, in our partnership with COG. The second thing I want to talk about is the policy bundle, and I've been here a couple times before. We talked to you about different parts of the policy bundle. Policy bundle, again, is the RTC project out of the COG. And several years ago, they identified 20 policies that they felt like were really good for the region. Had to do with quality of life, had to do with air pollution, congestion, those kind of things, transportation related issues. And they wanted as many cities as possible to do those. And so there's a carrot to go with that, no stick but a carrot. And that is if you adopt at least 50% or 10 of those 20 policies, then you are eligible to get transportation credits, transportation development credits. These transportation credits, these TDCs, if you get those credits, you can use those for federal projects as your local match, rather than having to match it with cash. So that makes your cash that you do have go a lot farther, gives you a lot of variety of projects and potentially bigger projects you can do. It also cannot be a project that's already planned. It can't be in the TIP or the Transportation Improvement Program for the COG, for TxDOT. So it's got to be a new project, and that's a good thing too, because that's kind of part of the thing is they want to encourage cities to invest in not only these good policies and programs, but also in building projects that maybe otherwise would not have been done. In our case, with the council's support, we've adopted 13 of these policies, 13 of 20. We need to do 10. We're actually working on the 14th one now, not because we get bonus points or any more money, but just because it's a good program to do, and that's trip reduction. The two that we're really actively working on right now, of course, are the complete streets, and you adopted the complete streets plan and by resolution back a couple of months ago. And the next step of that is developing I forget the council member over here too, I'm just looking straight ahead. This is still weird to me. I'm sure it is to you too.
Watch out, there's a council member behind you.
Well, I know him. I know he's behind me. So anyway, the Complete Streets, the measurement program, we've developed a draft of measures, and that's from which we'll give you an annual report starting about this time next year. And then the other one of those that we're working on is the idling program. That's been on your agenda the last couple of times, adopting the idling by ordinance, and then of course we'll have the education phase, and then the implementation phase. To the extent that come January, we'll be able to write people tickets. We'll get help from COG and so forth on the education part of that. Terrell is being recommended for $1.125 million in these transportation development credits, and that will go a long ways as a match towards whatever project is selected. There are several projects that are potentially out there. Again, there has to be a project that's not already on the TIP. At their August 28th meeting, which is this Thursday or Friday, the STTC, Service Transportation Technical Committee, will make a recommendation to approve those awards. There's 18 cities getting those awards. We're one of those 18. And then on September the 10th, the RTC will do that, and then we'll get the formal notice. We've already got an informal notice that we'll be getting that. But we'll be able to leverage those matches, those grants for larger products. And then there's a slide in there, and I've lost track of what page we're on, but there's a slide just showing the other cities. Just besides for educational purposes, again, there's 18 cities. I think it's 18 cities that are on here. Two things that I wanted just to mention because I think it's a good reflection on Terrell. One is there's only 3 cities on here that got an award the very first time they tried. And so Terrell's one of those 3. 15 of these people have been in this process before, so we're one of 3 that got on the very first try. The other thing is, if you look at those really quickly, you'll notice that we're far and away the smallest city on there. Most of these are very large cities, a lot of them are medium-sized cities. So Terrell is the smallest one on there. Terrell is one of 3 that got it the very first try. So that's a good thing about Terrell. It's a good support, because we got council members behind us, literally as well as figuratively here, and so that's a really good thing. And then the last a couple of slides there, I've already talked about the next one, I guess, the idling enforcement, the complete streets, and the trip reduction program. And then finally, the very last slide you have there are next steps. I'm kind of jumping ahead of that too, I guess. But TxDOT will be initiating engineering on the FM 429 project. That will hopefully we'll be meeting with them very, very soon. And then on the TDC projects, we'll be meeting with Coffman County, because Coffman County, of course, has got the bond money, and we'll be meeting with TxDOT, and we'll be meeting with COG, with RTC, through COG, to develop a project or projects, which we will use those TDCs to do and to improve transportation in Terrell. And so
a couple of comments to round out this conversation. On the 429 relocation, I want to thank Steve Rogers. I want to thank the Chamber of Commerce, because they really came forward really almost a year ago, basically in December of last year, and said, look, this is a real problem. We've got a railroad proposal to put a railroad track on top of the building at Hams Beach Orchard, and to take out a very, very substantial amount of the trees there. And when they brought that forward, we immediately started working on some coordination. Lance Gooden, your U.S. Congressman, got involved, was very willing to help out. And we basically came up with this thought that, you know what, you could do a very meaningful siding. You could take care of the transportation need if you would look just a little bit to the west of Hams Beach Orchard, and you could really do the old kill two birds with one stone. You can make a roadway improvement, because 429 never should have been built as an offset intersection to begin with. That was never a safe thing for TxDOT to do. And then the siding, of course, you could get that solved at the same time. So we're very pleased that it's made it this far in the process. We're also very pleased that it's made it this far in the process, and no one said that Terrell needs to pay any money on this. I think that's an important part of it, because it's TxDOT and Union Pacific and the Regional Transportation Council recognizing that this is a regional problem, not a City of Terrell problem, and they need to get working on fixing that. We were only informed of this because the city annexed several years ago the railroad track in front of Hams Beach Orchard. We did that so we would be the regulatory agent of record on things that Union Pacific does around our jurisdiction, and that's really paid off well here, because that's how we ended up getting involved and being able to bring this coalition together to spend $10 million to save Hams Beach Orchard. So I think that's a very important step for us, and we'll keep you up to date as that design process goes on. I'm also speaking with representatives from Hunt's. The Hunt family of ownership owns the Hunt Fairfield site ranch out in that area, and they're the primary landowner that will be impacted. So I've kept an open dialogue up with them as well, so that they can be aware of what's going on in that area. Related to the other projects, I would say that when you go back over to those city awards, we couldn't be prouder as staff that we've managed to secure $1.1 million in transportation development credits there. If you look at our peer cities, that's good standing for us to be in, because that's difficult to achieve these policy goals. That's kudos to the city council. We'll be able to leverage that $1.1 million to about $4 million additional other dollars, and be able to bring in, we hope, a very substantial project. I think the most likely one for us to be able to compete for, to apply that funds to, is going to be something on US 80. That's complementary to the Complete Streets policy that you adopted. That's a major goal of our long-range comprehensive plan, to make improvements in downtown. So as we go out and we meet with our staff at the Regional Transportation Council, we'll work through that process and bring back a report to you as we're able to negotiate and work through that partnership process. So that's just a little bit more of icing on the cake of some information from what John's been working on for us. Thanks to John for bringing these projects forward.
So you had mentioned that we get 50% of versus 100% of the credit. So how does that work?
No, it's a you make it or you don't. They give you 20 policies if you're a city, and you have to do 50%. You have to do at least 10. So it doesn't matter if you do 10 or if you do 19, you get the same credit.
Okay, good. So what, I'm just curious, we've adopted 13 of the 20. The other 7, are they just not something that Terrell needs to look at? Or?
2 or 3 of them off the top of my head, I don't know. I can't think of all of them.
Right.
There's I think 3 that just are not relevant to us, because of the nature of the city. There's one we are working on, there's one that we kind of would like to. So you may see two of them, depending on if I give you permission to.
Yeah.
You may see two of them coming back again later
Okay.
on. But they're all good ideas, they just don't necessarily fit us. One of them, for example, is, are you a member of a transit authority? Well, we supply money to the transit authority. We're not a member of a transit authority, for example.
Okay. Wonderful. Well, I want to say thank you for your hard work in getting this done. I think this is a great thing for the city moving forward. Appreciate your dedication and everything that you've done so far. Does anybody have any questions or comments?
As I'm looking at the map here, and so orange will be the FM 429, the alignment, and then the actually is on the north and the south of the 429, the alignment. I see that in green, and then it looks like, so I'm following 80 on the southern part of 80. That's where the proposed terrace siding will be at.
Right, that green line, and I know not everybody's looking at the map right now, but basically the idea is that everybody knows there's a Union Pacific line to the south of US 80. Union Pacific owns enough land of their own to be able to put most of that siding in. They are going to have to acquire some land, and then quite a few landowners have some property that encroaches on, or has some buildings that encroach on them. So as they go through and do these sidings, they send out notices to adjacent landowners, but that green line is essentially the idea that just to the south of the existing Union Pacific Railroad tracks, there would be a new railroad track built by Union Pacific at Union Pacific's cost, and that would parallel their existing railroad basically all the way from that Encore substation to the edge of the peach orchard.
So the potential industrial district, so it sounds like, if I'm reading this correctly, there will be some work to be done on the railroad to really allow for that potential industrial district to have access to that railroad, or is there access there already?
No, there's not access now. There's a longstanding Economic Development Corporation thought that perhaps that land would be useful for a future industrial park. It's zoned as industrial in our, or I should say, it's identified in our long-range comprehensive plan as land to be developed as an industrial development. Its adjacency to railroad tracks certainly lends itself to that, as well as sort of the layout of the overall land in that area. But that's in the future. The siding itself won't be designed day one to accommodate that industrial park. You're going to have to do more things for different turnouts, different sidings. Lots of additional work will have to be done. The trick is, no matter what you needed to do, or what you ever wanted to do on an industrial district over there, the very first thing Union Pacific would have told you, and in fact why the idea of developing an industrial district hasn't ever happened out there yet, is the first statement from Union Pacific when you want to do a district of that type is, well, we need a siding all along the entire thing. Well, now, instead of that being something that our Economic Development Corporation might do sometime in the future, now Union Pacific is doing that themselves. But that doesn't mean there's not lots more rail work to be done. That's just a good step.
I'm guessing, Mike, does it sound like, based on what you just mentioned, that if the our economic development wanted to move forward, was starting to move forward with that in the future, then it would come out of their cost, or would some of these credits apply?
I think that's entirely partnership arm wrestling to be done sometime in the future. It could be that you land a company that wants to have rail access and they pay for part of it. It could be any number of things in the future. I think it's in the idea phase right now.
Yeah, I wouldn't speculate on what EDC might do out in that area, because a lot of it's going to be cost related. If something happens and it's cost prohibitive for them to buy it and purchase it and develop it, then they wouldn't do that. They'd have another partner. But yeah.
Thank you.
Real quick though, on I see the realignment of 429. The current existing 429, that's in our city limits.
Yes, sir.
And so that, what happened, they abandoned that, and did we become?
Great question. What TxDOT will normally do is to, whenever they build a new section of road like this, they will turn that existing right-of-way over to the relevant governmental authority. So they wouldn't abandon it, they would turn it over to be ours.
Right, yeah, I'm sorry, not abandon it, but turn over.
Now, I will say, it would certainly give you the opportunity to, again, you got a landowner issue on both sides there, so we'd have to have some discussions with the landowner. It would obviously turn into a cul-de-sac, right, because you wouldn't have a railroad crossing there anymore. So I think there'd be a lot of discussions with the landowners. It would be development related. We'd have some real work to do there.
Right. Okay. Okay, thank you again. Anything else? Item number 5.2 is discuss potential partnerships with McLendon-Chisholm. This again will be John Godwin.
John, if you don't mind, I did want to say one little thing at the start of this. This is similar to two different agreements that the city of Terrell already has in place. We had an agreement with the city of Forney many years ago that kind of laid out the ETJ boundary between Terrell and Forney on our west side. Probably a year and a half ago, the city approved an agreement between the city and Oak Ridge that laid out the ETJ boundary between the city of Terrell and the city of Oak Ridge. So another project that we've asked John to work on is just how we could have a good boundary agreement in place on the extraterritorial jurisdiction between McLendon-Chisholm and the city of Terrell. So lots of things that John's going to say now are just sort of long-range issues, but it is good policy between us two different cities to try to balance where the ETJ line is between those two cities. And so that's what John's been working on.
Okay, John, before you get started, for the council, that's going to be pages 12 through 17 in our packets. Go ahead, John.
Thank you, sir. McLendon-Chisholm, some time ago, introduced the idea of becoming a retail water seller. In order to do that, their best bet is to buy water wholesale from the city of Terrell. They are served by 2 or 3 different water districts or water corporations. There's some of both in the area. Right now, those are just served directly to the customers, and so the city is left out. And that's a real problem for cities if they're going to grow, and McLendon-Chisholm's going to grow just like Terrell's going to grow because Kaufman County's going to grow. Already is. Statistically, one of the fastest growing counties in the country. And you all know that. So because annexation authority is really diminished over the last 10 or so years that cities have, the best way that cities still have to manage growth, control growth, guide growth is probably the best word. It's the word I use with the McLendon-Chisholm City Council anyway. So that you kind of get what you want, you have some input into it, where it's going to go, how it's going to go, and the big thing is quality and density, however you define that, and everybody defines that differently. And so that's kind of their goal. There's the possibility that they'll make some money off of it. There's a possibility they won't make any money off of it, but that's their business and their job. I started working with McLendon-Chisholm back in January, the end of January. Met with them for the first time. I've been meeting with them off and on since then. Of course, we have an interest in selling water up there too, because if we develop a utility system in that area, it's also an area that we will be annexing into in the future, that we will be hopefully guiding growth in the future on the Brushy Creek area. Most of the area we're talking about is within the Terrell ISD, and the Terrell ISD, of course, is very important to the community as a whole, and to be able to guide the growth within that area. And so Terrell's interested, and so I've been basically negotiating back and forth with the administrator, with the mayor, with some other folks up in McLendon-Chisholm. We've also met with a couple of the water supply corporations, the water district, the water district that's in the area. Talked to folks from Rockwall, who's a wholesaler, and then I've also talked to Forney, that's a wholesaler for one of those folks that supplies water in the general area. So the MOU that's in your packet, it's a couple pages long. MOU, you've obviously done those before, so you know what they are. And McLendon-Chisholm, I've explained to them what that was, so I don't need to do that here. I met with them a week ago Thursday for the first time. The council, actually in a council meeting, I met with council members and the mayor previously. Been in a formal meeting. It was their work session. At that time, they agreed to it, and it kind of covers, just to summarize, probably 5 basic points. One is they're going to buy water from us, and to we're going to sell it to them, kind of the simple things. That's going to require an additional contract, an actual binding contract, unlike an MOU. It'll cover, at some point, we'll have some sort of agreement that probably covers construction and finance, how to pay for it, who's going to pay for it when, where it's going to go, who's going to pay for the design, all those kinds of things, the mechanics of it. And then the other two things, one is fire service. It's kind of gotten introduced as a negotiation thing. They're building a new fire station. They've gotten a grant for a fire station. They've also gotten a full-time fire department with a grant. That grant's going to wear out. Those fire grants don't last but 3 years until they start phasing down. And so we've negotiated with them that in exchange for them providing fire services in some of our ETJ area, that we would give them some sort of grant to be negotiated again in the future. And then finally, the most important thing to me, besides the water sales, is part of this negotiation is the ETJ extraterritorial jurisdiction. And that is one of the goals that Mike told me early on, which he shared with me, was a mayor's goal, and perhaps others of you too, was to get as much of the Terrell ISD within our ETJ as possible. And so this agreement actually would move our ETJ line through agreement with McLendon-Chisholm to, with one small exception, it would move it north and west to match the county line, which is also the school district line. So on the west side of the border would be the Brushy Creek, Big Brushy Creek. And on the north side, with the exception of one property, it would be moved north all the way up to the Rockwall County line, which is also the Rockwall ISD line with Terrell ISD. So that's a really positive thing. They're talking about guiding growth. That's one of the things they want to be able to do. That gives the city of Terrell a huge opportunity to guide growth through, so that we can control more of our area and make our area that we can control that much larger. And so long term, it has the ability to theoretically at least take the city limits of Terrell, certainly the ETJ of Terrell in a shorter period of time, all the way up to the county line with Rockwall County, which is a good distance. Since I drive that road twice, usually twice a week, coming down here from Rowlett, I know it well, and I get to the sign that says 8 miles. Like, wow, well, someday this is going to be terrible if we play this right. And so that's what we're hoping to do. I am going to leave here in an hour and go to McLendon-Chisholm. Their city council has this MOU on their agreement, on their agenda tonight for an action item, assuming they approve it without change, which they said 9 days ago they would. And I haven't heard anything negative from them since then. And you folks are okay with it this evening. Our tentative plan is to bring it back to you for action on September the 1st. Have them act first, have them approve it first, and then have the council approve it and authorize the mayor to execute it at your next regular council meeting.
So, Mayor and Council, again, I'll just kind of give you a couple of wrap-up points. The main issue here is, as we look at our future, we've been very concerned that we direct quality growth within the Terrell Independent School District. And this is an opportunity, working with the city of McLendon-Chisholm, to have a good partnership, to make sure that we keep the cost of water down, keep the cost of water low by having the economies of scale that we can get by working with another city on water. That'll keep water costs down in the city of Terrell and provide water to an area that doesn't have a good, reliable source of water at this time. And then by doing it, it makes sure that we have a good ETJ boundary between us and McLendon-Chisholm. So it's a memorandum of understanding. As John mentioned, that means that this is a direction that we're going to work toward. None of this is binding at this time, but it gives a little roadmap for how the two cities can work together in the future.
And council's had opportunity to review it. Greg and Miguel.
We have reviewed it, Mr. Mayor, and frankly, I think this is a good way forward in the city. Dealing with wholesale water in this manner has always been fair game.
Do we have to have permission from?
To actually commence the wholesaling process, I think we do.
There's going to be a step in the future that John's also kind of doing some preliminary discussions on, that's related to the North Texas Municipal Water District. As they are our provider of water, they will ultimately need to be an entity that agrees to some of these different steps. John's been coordinating with staff at the North Texas Municipal Water District to make that happen, and he's also had some preliminary meetings with the rural water corporations that would be impacted by that decision, so that we can be upfront with all parties about what we're working on.
And part of, I mentioned that I met with Forney and Rockwell as part of that reason is
Right.
meeting with there's a lot of players out there that we have.
I know, my concern is the group to the west of us throwing a wrench in it, is that a possibility, or?
Well, I would say that what I'm getting as the message from North Texas Municipal Water District, I went up to one of these meetings a while back, and, we've continued to communicate with them. The feeling I get from North Texas Municipal Water District is that they share our interest in simplifying the provision of water. And simplifying the provision of water often means, let's deal with an incorporated city as opposed to a rural water district. Rural water districts do a great job in a rural environment, but when you're in the fastest growing county in the United States, then there's just going to be change. And that doesn't mean that anybody did anything wrong in the past. It doesn't mean that there's something inadequate about, any of those water supply corporations. It's what change is all about, more people move in, and you need a retail provider that's a municipality as opposed to a provider that's a rural water district.
The thing too about it, I think, in my experience, I'm seeing more and more, TCEQ is taking a somewhat lesser view of water supply corporations as opposed to special utility districts. They prefer special utility districts. What WSC is pretty much at a target on the back, especially those that don't have a lot of background. I'm not familiar with the ones over there in Rockwell. I don't know if they do or not, but generally, a WSC, with no debt, is a great target for taking.
Okay.
Mayor?
Yes.
I don't know, it's a little bit hard to hear, Greg, but I don't know if anyone has said, but in section 3 of this agreement, this memorandum of understanding, either party can terminate this MOU within 10 days, and it is not a binding agreement.
Right, yes, I did see that, 3.2.
This is just a roadmap, and the two parties will try to work along this roadmap, but nothing enforceable at this time. Lots of work to be done.
Yeah, it's got to be a win-win for everybody, and it looks like that's the direction we're trying to get to.
And part of the reason for this is not just to get both sides to say, this is what we're trying to do, we understand each other for sure in writing,
Right.
and both council support, but both cities are going to, at some point, pretty soon need to expend some resources, financial resources to hire engineers and to do some work.
Right.
I want to make sure we're both on the same page where either one of us spends any money.
Right, no, I agree. All right, thank you. Do I have any?
Mayor, I do have a
Yes.
question, and it's regarding their fire department. John, would you happen to know about how many employees they currently have on staff, or what that
6.
grant amount?
They have 6, and their grant is somewhere in the $300,000 range, I believe. And what happens is at the end of 3 years, it starts scaling down. And it used to be that it went away at the end of 3 years, and I've not dealt with a grant like that in 4 or 5 years, but I think it's the same thing. So at some point, it'll just phase down. And we wouldn't keep it up for any long period of time, and frankly, once we negotiate, I'll negotiate, if I'm negotiating, as little as possible. I'll offer them $7 to begin with. But it helps them fill that gap as they're growing. They've bitten off a bunch because they've got 6 full-time firefighters in a town of 1,400 people. It's hard to pay for if you don't have some other kind of source of money, and their grant's going to play out in a few years.
That's what I was wondering, if the grant, what the grant would be covering, if they would be on their benefits, they would still provide the benefits to them, if how they would decide. I guess I just would want to know more.
Yeah, the grant actually they'll write a check on an annual basis to reimburse up to this amount of money for firefighter pay, benefits, materials, those kinds of things. So for small cities, what happens is it's a growing city or it's a small city, in this case it's both. It helps them for the first 2 or 3 years, gives them a cushion to kind of get people in there. And so they can spend on any personnel-related issue as long as they don't exceed the maximum amount that they receive. I think it was $300,000. So it's really good at first. It's great for cities. A lot of cities.
Yeah, this is the same grant we have.
Right,
So
right.
McLendon-Chisholm has a safer grant. That SAFER grant pays them a certain percentage, and it'll roll off. The proposal here isn't that the city of Terrell will somehow become a new grant agency for them. That's not really what we're talking about. What we're talking about is there any fire partnership that we could stitch together with them, that their fire department, which is somewhat conveniently located on State Highway 205, could possibly provide any assistance to us, and that would then augment, some sort of cost issue for them. So we actually have a different consultant study going on this year in the FY21 budget, where we'll be looking at fire station locations, and we'll actually incorporate their fire station into that study, and we'll just see, is there any benefit in that to us? So it's kind of trying to stitch together is there a fire partnership available here as well? Again, we don't know yet, but we'll take a look at it, and we'll see if there's a fire partnership available here as well.
Right, and I hear that. It's just nice to have, kind of an estimate on how much we would be setting aside.
Yeah, I think it,
Depending on what they're thinking, based, to how much we would set aside from our annual budget to go.
yeah, I think they're happy to get whatever they can get, and it would be related to the cost for the engineering, for the design, for all those kinds of things. The other benefit to Terrell, at least potentially, is that having a fire service there within our ETJ that's readily available, that affects ISO ratings, and ISO ratings, of course, affect developability. If people are willing to build more expensive houses and spend more money on infrastructure. That's a long ways down the road. And they don't even have all this in place yet. At their last meeting, in fact, they were just meeting with their selection group to select a manager to run the construction project. So they're still a long ways away from even doing that. So.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, thank you, John.
As a part of this too, I was wondering, I mentioned fire.
Greg, I'm hearing from my remote folks that they would appreciate it if you came up to a mic when you speak.
Yeah, they can't hear you.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
No, I'll probably, no, as a part of the fire piece of this, in fact, with the wholesale in the water, and the fact that they're now being served by WSCs in some cases, has the issue of fire flow been discussed at all? Because that's going to be a big issue, I know, especially in these areas. I know we may be facing some of the same thing when we're talking about Lawrence and places like that.
Right, yeah, and it's a good point, because what will happen amongst, John mentioned engineering studies, the studies that will come forward, because, okay, now we both kind of see a roadmap, McLendon-Chisholm and Terrell see a roadmap, and let's go follow it. One of the things that will be in an engineering study is the question of, okay, for McLendon-Chisholm, for the city of Terrell, as we grow, what pipes are underground right now that are completely inadequate for fire flow, and as we grow, we need to make sure that even though, oh yeah, there's a water pipe there, well, if that water pipe won't support a proper fire flow, then you need a new pipe. We got to identify it, and we got to know what that cost is, and we need to go into all of this with our eyes wide open, right? And so we don't want to bring you a partnership that doesn't make sense for the city of Terrell. The question now is, well, is there a possible partnership? My thought is, yes, there is a possible partnership. Have we vetted it enough to know that all of the details are going to work? My answer is no. We haven't done that yet. The memorandum of understanding serves the purpose of getting us sufficiently on the same page so that we can spend some money on the engineering and the planning and the coordination with North Texas Municipal Water District, all of the financial analysis. That's work, and that's a lot of steps to go through, and this just gives us a starting point for those further evaluations.
All right. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, John. Good? All right, thank you very much. Our next item on the agenda is 5.3, discuss ethics policy update. This will be City Manager Mike Sims, and those are going to be pages 18 through 25.
So there's a little team that's been working on this, and that's Mary Jo Ramsey and a little bit of John Godwin and myself, and I think Greg's taken a look at some of this stuff as well. The idea here is that one of the things, Mayor, that you and I talked about before you even were sworn into office was the question of how are we doing on our ethics policy? And are we really have a frontline, recently updated ethics policy? Is it compliant with all of the things that we need to have it be compliant with? Does it include all the topics that need to be in there? Does it match the charter and the local government code? We've been trying to go through this process and see where we really are. In terms of current ethics policy, you've got a resolution that was passed by City Council back during the Henry Madgwick era. So if you can think back to how long ago it was that Henry Madgwick was mayor, that's how long ago it was since you last addressed an ethics policy. So that's not quite, but almost 20 years now. So over that period of time, obviously state laws have changed. There's actually been a charter election since then, so there's a lot to make sure that we really are getting in place properly. I think we've got a good start at that. Our idea is that we will ask council to consider all of this information, and then as you're working through that consideration process, we would end up with an ordinance where the ordinance itself would put in a new code of ethics, and that ordinance would put in place an affidavit to be signed, obviously by the sitting council members as soon as it's passed. But really the idea is it's a long living document, and that ordinance would, again, create that affidavit, and that affidavit would get signed by a newly elected candidate prior to them taking the oath of office. Because what you want is you want to make sure that that person, before they're sworn in, has opportunity to say, yes, they know what all the ethics rules are, they're abiding by the ethic rules currently, and they'll disclose a variety of matters in the event that these things might happen in the future with something that might need to be disclosed. Disclosure can be as simple as, hey, I moved from this address on Elm Street to this other address on Elm Street. And disclosure can be as complicated as, hey, I bought a share of this company, and that company occasionally does business with the city, so I need to make sure I recuse myself because I now own a percentage of this business. So lots of those things have been put into this. I won't pretend that this is a perfect opportunity to read the whole thing to you, but I am going to flip through page by page. Agenda item page 19 has the ordinance 2845 in it. You can see some of the whereases there, but I'll skip down to section 1. You're adopting a code of ethics attached as Exhibit A. I'll show you that in a moment. And then it says that you're also adopting an ethics affidavit, which is included as Exhibit B. It tells you about how violations of it go back to what's called a forfeiture of office. If you go back and read your charter, everything that's I'll call it discipline of a city council person really just turns into a forfeiture of office, and a forfeiture of office is something that the full city council votes on. So you have to have a process for your ethics that's tied back to your city charter, and we believe that this does that. The next pages over here are the actual Exhibit A, so that starts in on page 21. That's your code of ethics. The first chunk of the code of ethics are really just a little light rewrite of the things that were adopted back in the Henry Madgwick era, Mayor Madgwick era, and I won't read all of those for you. I'll just kind of highlight a few of them. Some of it's simple things. All council members dedicate themselves to the highest ideals of honor and integrity in all public and personal relationships in order that the member may merit the respect and confidence of the citizens of Terrell. That's a great, simple little intro to the whole thing, and we're just leaving that unchanged from when it was written up during the Henry Madgwick era. Number 5, simplest thing in the world, do not seek or accept gifts, services, special favors, things of value, believe the personal gain by use of confidential information, not going to misuse public funds, property. So all of that stuff gets in there that are all the common sense things you might think. Things as complicated, but maybe they don't come to mind as early as some of the other ideas. Simple things. Council members are still under code enforcement. Council member might have a high grass. Well, by golly, they're going to get treated the same as any other citizen. They're going to get a high weed or high grass notice, and this code of ethics says that. It's got a nepotism policy in here. I won't try to go through that, but we've all kind of read those nepotism policies before. That's an important thing. It defines spouse, not just as the common word spouse, but also somebody living together, whether legally married or not. So that's a thing that you've got to put in there and make clear to everybody. That number 12 is a good one, kind of a long one, but it just talks about the council members being members of a team, not individuals. So it's not like when you get elected, you've got individual authority and you've got corporate authority. You're a legislative body. You've got the power of the 5 to make those decisions, so things go through a council process. So 12 is all about that. It lists who you hire: the city manager, the city secretary, municipal judge, your assistant city attorney, your city attorney. 13 talks about public meetings, open meetings, well-publicized meetings, so that you're not doing deliberations in some secret way. Obviously, that's really just pulled straight out of some of the Texas Public and Open Meeting Act rules. And then again, we round out with some of these issues about not engaging in a dishonest or criminal act that would be prejudicial to the government of the city or reflect discredit on the city. So you've got some, clarity there in terms of your overall interest. I skipped past, and I didn't mean to, the business interest one. The business interest one is both real property and a business, and it's 10% or more of the value of that business entity. That's a fairly common rule, and it's really there to say, hey, you know what? If you go purchase a building on Moore Avenue and we're making a Moore Avenue-related vote, then you need to disclose that, and you may need to recuse yourself and not be involved in that vote related to something on Moore Avenue if you have a substantial interest in a business on Moore Avenue. And I'm just using that as an example. Exhibit B is the actual ethics affidavit itself. And again, I won't try to read the whole thing to you, but you can see down here where it says, okay, I've received the policies, I've looked at these chapters of Texas Local Government Code, I've got a copy of the conflict of interest from Chapter 171 of state law, all the things the city attorney would give you as you're getting briefed up and about to come in to be a member of the city council. The affirmations that would be sworn here in the affidavit would be things like meeting the residency requirement, meeting the requirements related to nepotism, meeting the requirements related to open government, and then obviously things related to acquisition of property using public funds. So then you've got the disclosure statement there on agenda item page 25. One of the things that we've heard several times as we've discussed this with city council is just the need to really make sure you have a disclosure. And that's sometimes just being open is the main part of having a good ethics policy. So all of that is item 5.3. We really bring it to you today to start the conversation. Don't mean at all for it to be something you think that you need to vote on quickly. We're hoping the council will spend some time reading through that, mulling it over, asking questions about it. I've got John here able to answer questions about it. I've got Mary Gail, obviously, Greg. So if you got any questions or items, things you want to make sure it covers, then we'd be happy to try to answer any questions.
So I don't see anywhere in there where we specifically addressed executive session, other than, using information made known to me only in the position on the city council. Is it
15.
number 15? Let me see.
Under the code. I'm sorry, that's not right.
No.
No, there's a number of mentions of confidential information.
Well, I know, but we should
Maybe that we need to tighten that up and say confidential information or information received in executive session.
It's either 13, I'm sorry.
number 13.
Yeah, there's a sentence there that says council members should not reveal discussions legally conducted in executive sessions.
These are things that are covered in the government code, section 551
Yeah.
anyway. It's a restatement.
No, yeah, I know, but I just wanted to make sure, and I think that covers it, yeah. the executive session information is not to be used or discussed, yeah. Okay. Well, it looks good. I mean, I read it, reviewed it a little bit, but I would suggest that all the council go through it and see if you have any questions, any additions, or questions on what is actually in it. That's a good job. Who did this?
I'll say that was the big team effort between your city attorneys and me and John, and we just kind of all pitched in and beat the old policy up and beat it into a new policy.
Okay. Wonderful. Anybody have any questions? All right, item number 5.4 is discuss financial policy. This is going to be pages 26 through 110 for council in our packet. This will be handled by Mike Sims.
So, Mayor and Council, not a lot of excitement here. I can tell you that we felt like last summer, and y'all will remember this from last summer, we felt like there were a handful of travel-related policies we needed to update. So if you recall, we tweaked the council travel policy and our financial policy last year. We tweaked the city staff travel policy last year. Those were updates that we felt like were important. This year, as we reviewed the document, we felt like we were very comfortable that this is a good financial policy that we'd like to recommend to you unchanged. State law tells us that we need to vote on it each year so that it's always up in front of you and it's fresh in the mind of both council and staff. That's a good business practice for us to do anyway, and that makes sure that everybody is mindful of it. Your department heads use this all the time. I can tell you that me and Jay Ayers are often thinking things like, okay, now, are we meeting our bid requirements, or did we do that RFP correctly? Let's go back and check the financial policy, make sure that we followed those rules correctly. A lot of your financial policy mirrors state law, and so obviously we do keep that up to date when state law changes, but there wasn't anything in an off year that needed to get updated. So we are recommending that you vote on it at a future city council meeting. But again, it's here so you can discuss it, ask questions about it. If you have any concerns, you can flip through it at your own convenience.
Council, I would recommend that you go through it, review it, and again, if you have any questions, comments, get with staff on anything that's not in there that you would like to see in there. And if you have any questions or something that's in there you don't understand, bring that up to them as well. Does anybody have any questions, comments?
Nope. No, we'll have that on an agenda item later in September for council approval.
Great. Item number 5.5, discuss monthly financial report. This is the July 2020 financial report. It'll be given by Finance Director Jamarcus Ayers. Yes, sir.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Today I present to you the 2020 financial reports ending July 31st, 2020. These financial reports, they include the budget amendment that was approved, that was in June. If you turn to page 2 of your financial report, we have the summary of investments. At the beginning of the month, we had roughly $17.9 million in investments between Texas Term, Techstar, and Texpool. At the end of the month, we had $14.9 million, and we generated $2,138,000 in investments for July. And you can kind of expect that trend to fall as far as investment income from month to month with COVID-19. If you turn to the next page on the general fund, with the general fund, we received $23.4 million in revenues year to date. And as you can see, if you look at the column on the amended budget, that includes the budget amendment that was approved which brought our revenues down to 27.7 million, and it brought our expenses down, we go down towards the bottom, to 27.3 million. We've expended, for the month of July, $20.1 million, which left a net of $3.3 million in revenue. I like to follow trends, so when I was looking at the numbers, just playing with the numbers, if we continue on the trend here for August and September, we'll roughly have over $1 million in net revenue for the year end. Next, I'd like to touch on sales tax revenue. If you turn to page 5 of your financial report, highlighted in blue was the new amounts that you approved with the budget amendment, which set us at 12.3 million. Here year to date at the end of July, we collected $10.7 million in sales tax revenue. If we continue the trend with July for August and September, we'll meet our amended budget number that was approved by council. And then the next thing, it's not really much to talk about with property taxes. It pretty much is what it is. We've collected 8.2 million. The budget amendment number was 8.7, and just following the trends, roughly $60,000 for August and September. We'll be right at 8.3 for property tax revenue, which isn't too bad if you throw in the fact, that we were going through some financial struggles with the COVID stuff, people not able to pay and things of that nature. If you go to the utility fund, which is the following page, make sure I didn't move my place. Yeah, following page, we had a net. For the budget, the amended budget, we have 146,000. If you look at the year-to-date actual, right now the utility fund is looking pretty good. I don't see any issues with them meeting their budget. They're sitting pretty well. I like to go and look at the water sales graphs on page 10 of the financial report. If you look at the budget number under the graph, that number that you see, that 2.3 million, that number should change to 9.587762. And I just caught this when I was looking over the financial report today. And
What are you looking at now?
the water sales.
So that's on page 121, or page 12 of your deal. Okay.
If you look at that, water sales for FY20 in total year-to-date is 8.170. If you can see, as far as how well the water sales have been going on along through the year, in most cases, from month to month, I don't see a problem with them actually hitting their target at 9.5, because if they have 900,000 for roughly 900,000 for August and September, they'll be sitting good.
So Jay, before we move on from this slide, when you say water sales, does that include, is it just the amount of water that's been expended each month, or does this also include what our customers have paid?
This is when we talk about water sales, we're talking about the money that has been received from water sales, residential, commercial, and even your wholesale. So that's what that includes.
Thank you. Comparing it to, our concerns during COVID-19 and maybe some customers not being able to pay, and I guess thinking about when we compare that, we were comparing it to what our usual customers that are in arrears compared to the increase in number of customers that were in arrears. Are you saying that that our customers are still coming in and paying?
Yes,
or should we-
yes, as it sits right now, based on in validity, they're all paying.
Yeah, let me add some color to that. We've been having Mike McKesson, I'm glad he's sitting in the audience, because we've been having, Mike kind of looks at the details of some of that. So what you're hearing from Jay is, in total, water sales are doing fine this year, but I would say that there's a different reason there. The reason they're doing fine overall is we do have more commercial customers buying more water, and it's been a hot summer and there's been a lot of irrigation. That's hiding the fact that there is a meaningful number of folks not paying their water bill for any variety of reasons. And so remember that we've discussed with council these letters and these notices that are going out at this time where we're saying, hey, we really need you to be on a formalized payment plan by September the 15th. And if you're not on a formalized payment plan, you haven't brought in your documentation, then we need to move away from this loose and friendly policy that we have now, where we've been allowing folks to not pay and then not cutting off water. Right now, where we stand is that what we've got to do is to say, you know what, we need to get back to standard policy, which is you only get a break of not paying that late fee, and you only get that break of not having your water turned off if you have a formal, documented, approved request in with the utility billing department. We've been deferring that and not making people have that paperwork in place. We really need to prove out that the folks not paying for water have a really good justified reason for not paying for water. So, Mike, I don't want to try to quote the number of people off the top of my head who are delinquent in accounts right now. Do you happen to have that number off the top of your head?
Rhonda has shared that there's approximately 300 accounts for delinquent. And some of that is, they haven't paid hardly anything for the last few months.
Mike, I'm sorry, because we have everybody on remote, I need you to say that to the microphone. Pardon me.
Sorry. Yeah, Rhonda has shared that there's at least around 300 individuals that are behind on their, getting caught up on their payments. And some of them are pretty substantial. They haven't paid hardly anything for 4 months. And some they're paying some, trying to. And so the intent in what Mr. Sims is sharing is to get people to agree, understand you've got to get caught up. And we're going to give them time. And actually, the paperwork that we'll be discussing is up to 12 months to get caught up. And so, you need to start taking it seriously, because there's not a law, there's not an ordinance that allows us to just waive for free water. It doesn't exist. So we're going to work with customers to the extent we can. There's a pretty substantial amount.
So the 300 represents what percentage-wise?
Percentage-wise, it's less than 8%. It's about 7 or 8%.
Okay.
And there may be up to 400. She was throwing a number off the top of her head the other day. I know that we have had, I will tell you, we've had larger numbers than usual who do not pay on time. We typically were averaging around 1,100, I believe, that would accounts, people would come in, they pay, but they pay late, so they would get a 10% penalty. Mm-hmm. Last month, Rhonda shared there was about 1,800 or 1,900, if I remember right. Mm-hmm. And that 10% penalty that was waived totaled $93,000. Now, that's higher than normal, but that's the kind of number each month that we could be collecting at least a portion of that like we typically would, and it's budgeted. Mm-hmm. It's a budgeted revenue line item for the fees and penalties.
Then the lines that we see out in front of the city, those are for water bills?
Yes, sir.
When on days that they're
There's a lot
backed
of
up.
people that wait till the last day or two.
And I'm just wondering how much that has, it has a effect on it, because if I'm on lunch break, or if I'm trying to come in and pay quickly, and I see the line, then I'm just going to take off.
That is a very good point, because Rhonda said that she has heard that from
Right.
customers, that and right now, they know that they're not going to get charged the 10% penalty, so they say, well, I'm not waiting in this line for an hour, I'll
Well,
come back.
Mayor, I'm going to say, I think you're bringing up a really important point, and that is the customer service element that we need to do here. So a customer service element is a item that we previously showed council that's related to the automatic payment kiosk. So y'all parked in the parking lot, you saw that we are getting a little bit closer every day
Right.
to having our automatic 24/7 payment kiosk. So the customer service upgrade, which will be active very soon, goes like this. And I'm kind of saying, I know y'all know it here in the room, but just saying it for people who are listening. The customer service improvement goes like this. Right now, from 8 to 5, you can come in, you can go to the drive-through, and you can directly pay your water bill. And we have a lot of people who like to pay cash, and so those folks come in and they make that payment through there. They might write a check, they might give a credit card, they might pay cash. Well, we want to add a second drive-through lane. That second drive-through lane will be a 24/7 kiosk, and that kiosk is basically going to operate like an ATM machine. You pull up to it, and you can provide it the information about what your account is, what account number you have, and then it will tell you how much you owe. You can put cash into it, and it will accept cash payments for your water bill. You can do a credit card payment or a debit card payment if that's what you need to do. So it'll take a variety of different payment mechanisms. It's open 24/7. It's in the City Hall parking lot, and we hope that will kind of break up this waiting in line issue that we've had, because you'll have, even on a day where lots of people want to go through the line, they'll have an option when they get up there of either paying in the 24/7 kiosk line or going through the drive-through lane. So we'll basically be advancing to having 2 lanes. That's a good thing. And then one of the lanes, obviously, will be a 24/7 lane. So we hope that customer service improvement will really help our folks out.
Are they able to pay that with their cell phones? Does anybody know? I mean, what we need to start doing as a city is finding out ways that we make it easier for the customer
It's
to.
paying online.
Yeah, this is, again, good comment. Remember, one of the things you changed last year was your ordinance. In fact, one of the last things John Lonswell did for us before he retired was to change the ordinance so that whenever you come in to hook up your water, you pay a lower deposit if you do the thing that's most convenient for everybody, which is an automatic checking account transfer. If you set up for a transfer, you pay a lower fee, and we really try to encourage people to just do automatic. I know not everybody likes an automatic transfer, but if you're willing to do an automatic transfer, it's much more efficient for everybody involved. And so for our customers who can, we do encourage them to do that. And that's a very simple thing to set up. You can set that, you can actually, I think this is what Jay was going to say, you can set up that on your phone, because that's on our website. And so we do have an opportunity to set up a regular payment on there.
So what, and I'm trying to think back to how the water bill looks, right? Is there a direct website link, or could we add a QR code, something that will take you directly, or maybe like a bit.ly type of a website, a shortcut to that online payment website?
I'm going to say you just asked a technology question that Mike McKeskin and Jay Ayers will work on for you. That's a good step forward.
Yeah, because you don't want to type in the whole, you don't want to give them necessarily something, type in the whole account, but you could do like a bit.ly.
There is, my understanding, okay, we're going to be going through this, we are going through this AMI specification. And when you get into the AMI system and we're looking into the customer portal.
I'm going to translate for our Facebook friends who are watching and say, AMI means Fancy Water Meter System.
Yes, the advanced metering infrastructure. Yes, and part of that specification is going to be looking at the customer portal. So we have an app set up, and the customer can log in and sign it. You can link that to a billing system. You have the capability to do that. And then somebody would have an app that would say, I believe, you have that option if you can get the system's link to say, pay my bill. Pull up my app, pay my bill, and it goes right to it, and you don't have to go through let me log into the city website and select pay my bill and put my account information. It's already stored, so it's a lot quicker.
All right.
But the thing, one other comment about these long lines, the thing that also is impacted is the eliminating the foot traffic at the
Right.
window.
Mhm.
Because of COVID, you know, the last few months, the lines have been a lot longer because people, they want to pay cash, can't.
Yeah.
And Mayor, again, just for the sake of saying it out loud, remember that also in that drive-through window, we're doing some municipal court payments. We're doing occasionally some transactions related to municipal development. And so, yeah, we are suffering with that customer service element because of how much of our business is going through that drive-through window right now.
Good, yeah. All right, thank you.
Okay, and the final thing that I was gonna cover is the equipment replacement fund.
I'm sorry, Jay, let's all get back on the same page with Jay here. I think you're on agenda item page 126. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
The equipment replacement fund, most of my staff, they were out for the month of July. We had it in, I mean, it's in the negative for the end of July, but we'll have double transfers for next year. So the equipment replacement fund, it doesn't look good right now, but it'll look good next month. I think it's roughly close to $300,000 in the green. What I was talking about to one of, to Glenn Caldwell, we were sitting down talking. I think it's just amazing how each department, knowing that we're going through tough times, how all of a sudden, you know, expenditures start, you know, curtailing, people's not spending as much, and everything seems to work itself out. So I want to take the time to just tell everyone that I appreciate them for, you know, working hard to curtail the expending so we can meet our year-end goal. And additionally, Mindy Long, she's been working for the city for 22 years. She's leaving. She'll be going to American National Bank. I really want to thank her for all her hard work. She was really essential to the department. And if you have time, please just go, you know, tell her thank you for her service. So that's pretty much it.
Does anybody have any questions, comments?
So I've over, really throughout the year, right, had a lot of requests for filling the potholes for road maintenance type of service requests from community members. So how are we doing with our funding to be able to accomplish that? I think maybe last time there was a mention that we're borrowing. With us still having, we have about 1 month, right, of our budget. So how are we doing on funding for road maintenance?
Well, I guess Mike, you can speak on it.
Well, let's all get on the same piece of paper. So let's start by answering the question by going to the general fund. So you're going to be on agenda item page 113 now. And so you've really asked a question where I would refer you back over to streets. So if you take a look at the streets expenditures, your total projected street expenditures in your amended budget is $2.2 million, okay? And that's your staff and your, as Tim Royce, I noticed Tim Royce joined us a little while ago, that's your staff and your stuff, okay? That's staff and stuff bundled together. So staff and stuff is $2.2 million in the amended budget for FY20. So what is this little sheet here telling me? It's telling me that through the end of July, so again, with 2 months left, so that's August and September remaining in our fiscal year, you have spent $1,250,000 $780,000 in streets, and that's on an amended budget of $2.2 million. Now, obviously, in August and September, we're going to be paying staff, and that staff is going to be part of the expenditure there. But Glenn and I talk every day about, okay, can you really get targeted and can we get efficient on making sure that we spend out what we do have allocated on streets this year. And the goal is to get there. So when we receive information about, a street concern, we still have money in the budget to tackle some of those things. We're still trying to tackle potholes. We're still doing our work under the streets program. So I would encourage council just to continue to communicate to us about streets. I was showing the mayor earlier today a graphic from our pavement management team. We've got a really good inventory that's going to be delivered to everybody here soon that shows our pavement management results. The pavement management results are fascinating because it gives you a chance to look at, hey, this area is coded as red. That's a bad street. Green, okay, that's a good street. And I bring that up to tell you that that's what we want to have guide our street decisions. We want to be analytical about it, and the data gathering that Glenn's been able to do this year is really helping us, or will be able to help us target that. So I just say, right now, just keep feeding us information about things that you're concerned about streets. We're working hard to fully spend the $2.2 million you see on the sheet here.
So we have currently $436,000 available on that line item?
Yeah, and then if you count salaries for well, let's just look at it like this. If you expend $100,000 for August and September, that's going to leave you roughly with $236,000. But then again, you have other expenditures that they have to take care of. So.
Okay, so there's some money, not all, it's not the $400,000 that we're looking at,
exactly.
but there is some money available. So if you had potholes, turn them in.
Yeah, I don't feel like I need to give you the advice to not be shy.
Well, look, here's what I say, is there's got to be a way for us to get efficient on not only streets, but mowing and some other things that we're doing within the city. I've got some ideas. Mike and I have discussed those. When we get that all settled where we can present it to the council in form of some type of handout or bullet points or whatever it may be, and then get your input and see if we can figure out a way for all of us to have the information we need when we're out in public, whether it's related to streets or mowing or whatever it is. That's my goal. And I'll
Street lighting there.
yes, street lighting, exactly. That's a good one. I didn't bring that up, but
No,
we need to-
absolutely. Listen, this is a big issue. Remember on the street lighting thing that we pay Encore every year for street lights. And they maintain, they change light bulbs, all that sort of good stuff. We had a street light inventory done this year. So we did a drive, we identified every single light bulb that was out. We had 90 street lights out. And so, that's a hard to keep track of thing. And kudos to the Glenn Caldwell team because they identified 90 things. They made 90 service requests to Encore. Encore, I think, has followed up on 85 of them as we've kind of gone through that process. So being vigilant about the details, man, I'm all about that. That is a great thing to do, and that's why I encourage anybody. I don't mind if it comes in through Facebook or if it comes in from a text or wherever it comes in. Everybody out there is a secret shopper for the city, if you will. Everybody out there can say, hey, I noticed this thing, it needs to get fixed.
Right.
That's great input. Y'all are eyes and ears, and we have a limited staff. And so, to the extent that you can feed us information, keep sending it in.
Okay. Anyone have any further questions, comments?
So I do have one additional question for Mr. Sims, OJ.
Yes.
So we have 2 months left in the budget year. Are we concerned about revenue or expenditures? Are we on target to meet our adjusted budget, I guess is the question.
As it stands right now, we are.
You want to add anything to that one?
No, I'd say that, remember, this is a close of July, as we kind of eyeball things going on in August. August sales tax receipts were healthy, that'll show up in the next time around, and we're confident that we're going to make budget this year. Our amended budget shows us up by $379,000. That's contribution to our reserve. I think Jay and I built you a budget for FY21 that assumes that we're going to take a little bit more than that into the start of next year, and I'm confident that that's a good budget estimate for us.
Okay. All right, thank you, Jay. Okay, next item is executive session. We have none, we adjourn.
I'll say this to Councilman Simpson and Councilman Royce as well. I know you read everything, but the